It's no surprise that AI spend is going up everywhere, but what's shocking is the decision-making and lack of guardrails behind some of this spend. Keeping up with the trends is exhausting and confusing. You have CEOs posting on LinkedIn about cutting headcount for more AI, billboards across the country full of tech jargon. It's an onslaught of more AI, more productivity, more investment. Uber blew through their budget in 4 months. Microsoft cut Claude access before year close. And Meta employees created a leaderboard that rewarded who burned the most money on tokens. They used 60 trillion tokens in 30 days. This creates pressure because people don't want to miss the boat. But spending more on AI doesn't actually mean anything unless there's something to show for it. I'm not sure people know what's going on, and I didn't either, so I looked into it. First, I needed to understand the scope of this issue, so I spoke to Ara, the economics lead at Ramp.
I'll give you some data to actually ground this kind of conversation. One is that AI spend has grown about 13x, even for the highest spending businesses, just year over year. We've never seen this kind of growth from any other spend category. At the same time, for the top quartile of firms spending on AI, it's still only about 2.5% of their business spend, excluding payroll. Maybe about 1% including payroll, less than 1% including payroll.
Okay, so to recap this to make sure I understand, it's not that it's a major part of the budget right now. That's the problem. It's the fact that if this growth continues at this rate, this is 5% of our budget. We're talking like some dire circumstances.
And no one knows where it's supposed to land. No one knows whether it's supposed to be 1% or 10%.
So this left me with a couple of questions. The first of which is, how can a company not know how much they're spending or are planning to spend on AI? Like, how is that not tracked?
There was a lot of companies that kind of treated AI spend as really like a software adoption problem, and they hired kind of like a chief AI officer to go out there and buy different software. And I think what's happened now is that in November when Opus came out, I think no one had really budgeted for this amount of token spend. And now we're hitting, all these CIOs and CFOs are like, wait, we ran through our token budget already.
Okay, so companies were treating AI as part of a software budget. But what makes AI different from a software budget? To answer this question, I just needed a baseline understanding of how we've paid for computing and software over the years, because the model we're using today isn't new. Turns out it's actually the oldest one that we have. In the 60s and 70s, you paid for time. Supercomputers cost tens of millions in today's dollars, so companies would either lease one or rent time on someone else's. You submitted a job, the meter ran, and you paid. By the 70s, companies like Cray Research were building the most powerful shared machines on the planet. The cost of these meant that you couldn't just sit down to use one, you had to submit a job to it. And because that compute was so expensive, the people buying time on it were specialists, like nuclear physicists and aerospace engineers, people who had a specific calculation to run. Then, personal computers arrived. For the first time, you owned the machine, which meant that you owned the software too. And that worked until companies needed hundreds of copies. So vendors invented volume licensing. Microsoft formalized it in the 90s. You sign an agreement and you pay per employee, one license per seat. This was true even as companies moved from floppy disks to company servers in the 90s. Your software bill was your headcount times a price. Someone in every company always knew exactly what software they had, what it costs, and what it was for. Salesforce moved this whole thing online in 1999, and they took that same seat model with it. You still bought a specific tool to respond to a specific problem. The problem came first. You need to track leads. The tool came second. You get a central CRM. That structure held through most SaaS companies that followed. Then AWS launched in 2006, and they brought consumption pricing back. Now for infrastructure, you paid by the gigabyte, by the hour. This returned to the old compute model, but it still worked because every bill traced back to a specific task or workload. A CFO could ask, what is this for? And get a clear answer. And this is where AI diverges from all of this. The meter is running without specialists controlling it. Usage is up, but nobody knows if it means productivity, and the bill doesn't trace back to anything that can be pointed to. In my research, I found a piece by Jaya Gupta called Token Budget Wars, which is a great summary of the state of AI right now.
Maybe the simplest way of thinking about it is in software, like if a user logged in or they sent more messages, or maybe you created more records in like Salesforce, or you ran more queries, then maybe you could extrapolate that, hey, the product is actually becoming more valuable and people are using it. And maybe people were kind of approximating usage to adoption. But I think that AI really breaks that relationship.
And that divorce between knowing what you're paying for and knowing how to measure it is what led us to trends like token maxing. To understand how we got there, we also need to understand how incentives drive behavior. There's an urban legend that in the Soviet Union, a factory was measured by the amount of nails produced. In response, the factory produced thousands of tiny, useless nails. When this was found out and shifted to weight, they made massive, heavy nails. This illustrates Goodhart's law. Once a metric is tied to performance, people game the system, even if it undermines the actual goal. And this is where you hitting the subscribe button helps me hit my performance goals. For AI, cost is measured with tokens. Tokens are clusters of letters and fragments of words that language models convert to numbers and then predict what comes next. Instead of thinking of AI language models as actual intelligence speaking to you in the same language you do, think of them as highly skilled prediction webs. The way that they predict is based on chunks of letters. A quick example you can explore yourself is at the OpenAI tokenizer. AI providers still charge for compute, but they also charge for these tokens like cell phone carriers used to charge for texts. You're charged for what you send and what you receive. But there's something else you're paying for: API calls. APIs are what connect you to what you're asking for. For example, if you're staying at a hotel and you want French fries, you can call room service. They will confirm the room number, take your order to the kitchen will make the fries, and then the server will deliver it back to the room. If charged like AI, you would pay for the length of the phone call, the input tokens, the server's trips to and from your room, the API calls, the work done in the kitchen, the compute, and the size of the fries, the output tokens. There's obviously more to this, but to keep it simple, the food delivery and work in the kitchen are baked into the token price that you'd see in the bill. If they get the order wrong, you still have to pay for the entire process and what they delivered. Now imagine a kid is left in that hotel room, an agent, and is told to get food and eat until they're full. Every time the order is wrong, they have to rehash all of the previous steps, paying for every single one along the way. That might rack up a pretty hefty bill, but it also might work. And this is why agentic AI gets so expensive. When companies started measuring success by token usage, it's no surprise that employees found ways to game the system and climb the leaderboard by wasting tokens. I don't think many people question why agentic AI is exciting to engineers and developers looking to build tools, but what I don't understand is why a company would allow employees to rip through tokens with no guardrails. On the surface, the clearest explanations I've seen are that companies were trying to get employees to use AI as quickly as possible. Once adoption of those tools happens, then companies have to decide how to walk it back. Sonia Wong, a partner at Sequoia Capital, is quoted in the Wall Street Journal saying that token maxing is an imperfect metric, but what matters for your company is my employee becoming insanely AI-pilled? And that requires them getting on this token maxing mindset. I think I need to touch some grass. Who benefits from companies becoming more AI-pilled? The ones selling AI.
OpenAI and Anthropic, they also make money through subscriptions, but 80% of their business revenue comes from APIs and tokens. So they really need you to token max. Like, they're very reliant on that.
And of course, Jensen Huang is going to say that he wants his engineers to spend $250,000 in tokens. NVIDIA sells hardware for compute. I see two overlapping incentives here that made token maxing all but inevitable.
Being transparent about the costs and reining it in is, one could argue not really aligned with those incentives. And also, even if it was, they will never recommend a different provider's model to you, even if it's cheaper and better. The only person that can credibly do that is a third party that is unbiased.
When these costs are hard to track, that's where an accidental $500 million bill, like that reported in Axios, comes from. Internally, when leaders are pushed to seek growth, they're going to bet on a solution like AI. In a cutthroat place like tech, the companies most likely to token max are the ones who win on innovation. It's hard to measure innovation while it's happening, so the easiest metric to look at is usage. Large incumbents don't want to lose the innovator's dilemma to an up-and-coming startup who might fill a gap, so you get token leaderboards. In hindsight, token maxing might have just been driven by hype and fear. But maybe a more optimistic reading is that we saw Goodhart's law in real time. Someone looked at the easiest available metric, they tied status to it, and 60 trillion tokens later, someone pulled the plug and asked the question that should have come first. What is this producing? And this is the question they're asking at Uber, where the company watched their AI budget evaporate in 4 months.
That link is not there yet. I mean, I think maybe implicitly there's more that is getting shipped.
This might just be killer media training, but the framing of this wasn't that they wasted money. It was that the link between token spend and output is hard to draw. As companies step away from prioritizing adoption toward prioritizing results, the benefits of only looking at usage disappear. The companies who led the charge learn their lesson and gain experience, and the ones who held back avoided hurt and headlines and now know what to avoid. But they may be a step behind. I think it's safe to say that token maxing is dead. But we still have an unignorable question. What do we do now about AI spend? Luckily, the process of figuring this out isn't actually that complicated. It starts with seeing what's being spent.
One thing that we've actually noticed is that driving visibility is actually step number one to get people to be a lot more mindful about how much they're using. One thing that we did internally at Ramp is Inspect is our coding agent. And a few months ago, they started putting in a live meter of how much the cost is going up. And it's really akin to when I get in the back of a yellow cab in New York, when I see like the actual meter running up in real time, it makes me a lot more conscious about, do I really need to take this for an extra 5 blocks, or do I just want to get out and walk?
First, see what you're spending. Then you can understand where it's going so that you can act on it. But you have to do it in that order, because companies that are skipping straight to acting by routing to cheaper models or using blanket caps or killing budgets could be making a totally wrong move. Siddhi Surana's team at Ramp built token spend intelligence, which can help companies figure out how to approach these next steps. But whether you use Ramp or not, here's a helpful framework for those next steps.
So the way we've thought about this problem is that you can see it, understand it, and you can control it. So all of your spending, you don't have to log into 10 different dashboards to get all of that spend in one place in real time. You also don't have to wait until the end of the month. It's all real-time visibility. Once you can see that dollar amount, you want to actually be able to break it down. You know, if I'm spending $10,000 a month, who is spending that? What are they working on? Is this something important? Is this more experimental? And then lastly, once you understand your spending, you can actually make informed decisions about how you want to control it. And by controlling it, it can be something as high level as setting a spend cap, or it can be a lot more nuanced and surgical down to the request, down to the session level.
I started this video genuinely not knowing what was going on, and having looked into it, I'm not sure anyone has it fully figured out yet. But I will say, the ones who come out on top aren't going to be the ones who just spend the most. They're going to be the ones who actually know what they're spending their money on and why. Thanks for tuning in. If you made it this far, consider subscribing because there's more coming soon. I'll see you next time.